Hi, my name is David Lowy, and I'm a partner at Google Capital. Today I'm visiting the offices of Credit Karma, one of Google Capital's portfolio companies. And I'll be speaking with Ken Lint, the founder and CEO. Welcome, Ken. Thank you very much for taking out the time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You know, for me, entrepreneurship is one of the highest callings, definitely the highest calling in business. And I'm always curious to hear people's story.
I grew up in a very strange place in the sense that it was Las Vegas, which you don't see a lot of people, particularly in the Silicon Valley, from Las Vegas. But my parents immigrated from China when I was 4, grew up most of my life in Las Vegas. And I guess from an entrepreneurial perspective, something started really young. I remember one of my first things I remember, getting some direct mail, piece was sell postcards from your house. And as a kid, I went door to door selling postcards, right? Or I guess it was greeting cards. And I think that just kind of got ingrained in me. And I think that people a lot of times will say you become a serial entrepreneur, or it's something that is part of who you are. And I think for me, that was definitely the case. My parents came from China with not very much. And I always remembered how many jobs that they'd worked and just how hard they'd worked. And I think that was probably been one of the bigger motivators in my life as well. Out of college, my first self-promoted business was I sold computer parts. I had a 2-bedroom condo and I sold extra computer parts. And the thing back then was you could buy a computer chip that ran at 300 megahertz. You could test to see if it ran at 500, and then you could actually charge a huge premium if you could get that to work. Yeah. So that was my first job, or sort of my first entrepreneurial calling. I did that, and I started a whole bunch of internet gaming cafes. And then ultimately I came out to the Bay Area, and that was when sort of a more meaningful business grew up, which was the marketing agency. It was a great lifestyle business, but I wanted to do more. So I had the luxury of saying, hey Greg, run this for a little bit. I have this other kooky, crazy idea with Credit Karma. If you take a look at sort of consumers, there's $13 trillion worth of consumer debt. And the way that those debts get booked historically has been inefficient from a consumer perspective, right? You go to an auto dealership and you buy the car that a dealer says you can afford on a monthly basis, whether that's $500. But you don't know that $500 translates into a 16% interest rate. So at Credit Karma, we're able to see that, wow, that's a 16% interest rate, and your credit says you qualify for an 8% credit interest rate. So by doing that, we're able to get the customers into the better banking products, into the better banks, the ones that aren't taking advantage of consumers. And we're able to add a layer of transparency that just has never existed before. And that, I think, is really the more interesting piece of the credit report information, right? People thought the business is about giving away the credit for information, but because you give the credit score information, now you've unlocked all this value for the consumer, for the banks, and for Credit Karma, right? And I think that is a tremendous win-win-win. And I think from a Google perspective, a lot of people can write checks, all dollars are green, but the people who can add the most in terms of the expertise and the scale, that was what really drove us. One, I've always just loved Google products. We talked about the Google television and all the other products I've used over the years, but I think most importantly was, I think the Google investment really made me focus on scale, right? It got me out of the paradigm of thinking about the unit economics and sort of what seems a little bit more trivial today, but really how do you think big? Having access to the people who've done it at Google, right? The people who are experienced massive scale, being able to talk to some of your architects, your internet architects around, how do you build a platform that can support 40, 50 million users, right? That's big for us. That's relatively trivial for Google, but who has experience doing that, right? Most people don't, and that for us has always been areas that we've leveraged, your team quite a bit for. So thank you.
You're about to become a father for the second time. There's kind of a lot of people who aren't at your stage of entrepreneurship. They're just kind of starting out. What are the key things that you try and emphasize with young entrepreneurs?
I think, the highs are very high, the lows are very low, and it's easy to throw in the towel, right? So I always kind of tell people that you have to stick it out. Don't get so taken away with the highs either, right? So, they all come back. And I think, passion and conviction are really important. No one is going to believe in the business, in your team, in you, more than you. Right. So, you have to lead with that.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.